Just move out because no one will be able to see me. So before we begin, I felt like it was important to give you a bit of background about myself. This is not something I typically talk about in a Heartfelt Tidbits presentation, but the past month or so, this has been coming to me more and more frequently to share this journey or this discussion. So I grew up in Mount Healthy, Ohio. It was a poor neighborhood. I grew up in a poor family. My parents had never finished high school, nor went to college, obviously. So as a child, I was very fascinated by people that were different than me, because I was different than a lot of my peers. I aspired to be like them, but I wasn't like them because I was poor. So I met an elderly neighbor whose son was in the Vietnam War and had married a young girl and was bringing her back home, and she had 2 children that were stuck there. And night after night, we would listen to radio broadcasting about what was happening in Saigon and wonder, when will they get out? When will the kids make it here safely? And through that experience, I started gathering a feeling of like, wow, what if these kids are my age. What if my grandmother was trying to get me to a helicopter so I could be exported and end up safe somewhere? What would that be like? So that memory, over the years it didn't stick with me much. I didn't think about it, but over the past month, like I said, it's been coming up more and more frequently in my mind about that. When was I introduced to refugees? Actually, by the time I was 10. So then when I went to college, I ended up in an international dorm because that was all I could afford. It wasn't like the best dorm to live on in campus, and it's where I got placed. So I started meeting people from the Middle East in my dorm, and I took a liking to them. So here's one of the photos of when I was in college. I brought this young girl from Saudi Arabia home so she could see my aunt and uncle's wedding. Because I'm like, you have to see an American wedding. You have to see what it's like. So she came home with me to experience that. And, think about this. This was in the 80s. I remember my neighbors saying, oh, she's bringing a black person home. That's the time that people felt, if someone looked different, they didn't think they were from another country. They identified them based on the color of their skin. So this is another photo. The guy you see dressed as a cowboy is one of my closest friends from Saudi Arabia. We still communicate probably weekly. He's married with 7 kids. We dressed as Arabs and dressed him as a cowboy. So this is my entire family and some friends. We said, you know what? We want to see what it's like to be an Arab. So I think my parents knew very young that I was different than them, right? I know my mother has said to me, we don't quite know where you came from or how you developed this unique passion you have, because we didn't instill that on you. We were too busy working and focused on you just graduating high school. The fact that you went to college and met all these foreigners, that happened not because of us. So my first teaching about people that were different than us, different religions, was with my own family members. So in '89, I graduated from college, and I began my career in information technology. When I went to college, my dean of the IT department said to me, "Why are you majoring in this? You are giving me a headache. You are not an IT person." And I'm like, "But it makes a lot of money, and I have a lot of debt." So I'm thinking about money, you're thinking about my personality. So in '92, I met another immigrant, and that was my husband from Nepal. He was my taxi cab driver in Chicago. I was not searching for him, nor was he searching for me. But we met in July, we were married in November. This year it will be 25 years, so 3 kids. Thank you. If you know Amsu, you may want to tell him that I'm expecting a honeymoon that I never got. And notice I have no diamond ring because it broke, so it might be nice if he gets me something real instead of that $10 ring I wear. I'm serious. Some of you know him. So after a number of interim, like consulting gigs and working in IT, I ended up at Teradata, a company I was passionate about. When Mark Hurd left Teradata, he asked me to join HP with him. That really changed my career path. I went from being a technologist to an industry expert, hustling vaporware, and having trust that somebody in the back end was building what I was selling and touting as being the next best thing. I was very, very successful. So successful that Teradata said, "Come back and we'll have you work for the CTO. So you can compete against HP now on this side." So I did that. Very lucrative career, happy, live in Wyoming, Ohio. We were living the dream life. In May 2008, I met my first refugee family from Bhutan. It was by accident. I intercepted an email that was sent to my husband, Amsu, who is from Nepal, and it said, "Can you help translate in Nepali to this refugee family?" When I met this family, and that's their picture, they had been put in a hotel near the airport. And they were in that hotel room, unable to open the door. So when Amsu went there, they had been there a number of days and had not left the room because they didn't know how to turn the door handle down. They didn't know what a key card was. They didn't know what the bathtub was, running water, electric, TV, you name it, they didn't know it. So they came to our home for dinner. My first time cooking Nepali food was 2008. And I served them some food, and they were sharing their story via Amsu, translating it for me. And I told him, I said, as I left on my next business trip in the morning, I called from San Francisco, and I said, Amsu, I can't sleep. All I can do is see this man in my mind telling me how he traveled for 14 days across the Himalayan mountain range to get to safety in Nepal. He watched his brother be burned on a stake, and he came here, and they have been stuck. We have to do something different. We're so aware, and we have so much to offer. And Amsu was like, "Sheryl, you're insane. You're gone all the time. We have 3 children. I have a job. We don't have time. You volunteer a lot, but you can't take on this project." And I said, "I think I can." So, yeah, and he's seen that I have. So, I say Indra Tamang is his name, and I can point him out. He's this gentleman here, and he's forever changed my life. I mean, I think if I talk about people who have influenced me in my life, he would be the person I would say has had the greatest influence and impact on who I am today. So in the beginning, what do? I never worked with refugees. I never had a clue what to do with people who didn't speak the same language as me, who couldn't talk to me. So I learned I could act really well. I could do chicken, I could do light, I could do sun. And then I thought, I'll start taking these people places with me. I have to take my 3 kids anyway, so why not take them? Because I thought, I don't have time to plan special events, but I have a big van with 8 seats, 7 at that time, but I can fit 20 of you in it. Because you're small people. So people learned how to sit on laps, and they weren't used to seat belts or being in cars anyway, so they didn't understand the safety precautions or that their newborn needed a car seat. I said, hold the baby on your lap, and if they need to be breastfed, you can feed them while we're driving. So these are some of our first pictures. I had to take them to the grocery store. Imagine if you've never seen a grocery store, if everything you ate came from right outside your door or was delivered in a van that was marked IOM, which is the place that delivers the food inside the refugee camps. My neighbor, thank God, this is not my house on the far right. I don't want you to think we had that much money. That little mansion is my neighbor's house. I'm the small house next door, but she has a built-in swimming pool. So I was like, Ann, do you mind if I bring about 30 people over to swim? Oh, and by the way, they don't know how to swim. They've never seen a pool, but they did go swimming in lakes before, okay? So they'll be all right. So we did this. I had to depend on my neighborhood because I didn't know, and I didn't have time to navigate and look for the rest. So our first program was a Friday senior citizens class. And I began it because the Friday, the senior citizens were isolated here. They felt like their kids went to school, they went to, their young adults went to work, and they stayed home, and they had nothing to do. They couldn't walk out their door and talk to their neighbors. They didn't know how to speak the language. The Duke Energy and mailmen were telling me, hey, these people keep hugging me. What's that about? And I'm like, that's how we greet people here. And he's like, not me. Everybody wanted to give tea to anybody they met, including the census workers. Imagine being a foreigner here, a refugee, and having a census worker come to your house. It's a nightmare. So I started this program to sort of integrate them in with a group of senior citizens at a nursing home down the street from me at the St. Clair Convent. The program took off. It was fantastic. I was still traveling. I did this on a Friday. So I would fly home on Thursday night. Friday morning, I would tell my boss I had conference calls till 1. And I would run into this building, teach these people, and play games and do some things with them. Then we'd eat lunch together. Then I'd get on some conference calls and tell them, okay, you're going to do an activity with the residents here. I learned that, it was difficult to do that by myself. I was flying solo, and most mornings I would show up in that parking lot of the building crying hysterically, like, what have I done? I've overextended myself. I can't tell my husband because he'll say, I told you so. So I have to keep it secret. Well, I sent an email out, Starfire U, who's here, they were our first group to respond and say, we can bring some volunteers. And I said, can you bring them to help set up lunch and play bingo with our folks or games? And they were like, we'd love to. What a gift that was to have them participate with us, alongside us. Then that led to, let's do a fashion show. Let's do a creative dance project. Then NKU was like, what if we bring a student and have them do a photography exhibit? Oh, let's write a book. Let's bring in translators and hear their journey. So that sort of changed my life, because as we started writing their book, The Journey Home, we documented 28 people's stories. It took me sometimes a month to write one paragraph of the story. And I told my husband, I cannot justify working any longer. Now that I'm so aware there's over 1,000 people here from Bhutan, I'm stretched way too thin. They need me more than my company needs me. I need to be out with them and serving them. You know, I owe it to them to let them be successful here and give them more of myself instead of this 1 hour, 2 hour sessions I was doing and dragging them with my 3 kids everywhere. So it was not a good conversation in our home. When we told our 3 children that their mother was no longer going to work, who was paying for all their stuff, they were not happy. They were, my first interview by Wyoming Living, my oldest son, who's pictured there at the bottom in the middle, when they asked him, what do you like about what your mother's doing? He said, I hate it. Because no more eye stuff, no more vacations, and cruises. God help us, what are we going to do? We can't go on a cruise every time we travel. That's our favorite kind of trip. So I told them, you will get much more out of this in your life. Trust me. Have faith. I will tell you, they still haven't seen it yet. He's 22. He's starting to tell me a little bit that he feels appreciative that I shared this experience. But my youngest daughter, Chloe, who has lived this way most of her life, definitely feels like she's been impacted. And I look at the things she's doing today at Model UN and speaking out against human tragedies, and she's been on multiple marches. I think she's somebody who gets it, right? She's somebody who knows you can't sit idly when you see something wrong. You have to be the change you want to inspire in others. Just talking about it doesn't work. You have to be the example and encourage people to follow you. So in the picture on the left with the teddy bear, I brought that because that's a reminder that all this stuff you collect, all the things you have in your home that you go, I can't live without it. Let me tell you, I go to thrift stores to shop for these people. That stuff that you cherish so much, most of it's for sale there. So we hang on to a lot of stuff. We actually let our stuff manage who we are and manage our lives and keep us from realizing our true potential. And it's just stuff in the long run. I learned that. We didn't have to ask neighbors for clothing for children for 2 years. We were able to just take from our own kids' closets. And that included coats. So that's how much stuff we had accumulated. Let me just go back. And every time somebody becomes a citizen, we celebrate. We have a big little party, and we give them a new American gift of stuff, junk, that they can hang on their wall, decorate the outside of their home, depending on the season. And we make a big deal out of it, because for some of these people, like the 82-year-old man that you can read about on my blog, he didn't want to die in a place where he didn't have citizenship. So, we take it for granted they don't. It's a big deal to have a document, especially for the refugees from Bhutan who have lived for 25 to 30 years now without having a residence or belonging as part of a country or being able to get a passport. And then on the right, you see the kids that first started graduating from high school. Many graduated from college. Some have master's degrees now. And they always tell me, Auntie, how will we ever thank you? I'm like, you're thanking me every day by being successful, by being the person you are, and realizing your true potential here in the U.S. And pay this forward, right? Unfortunately, this crisis isn't going to end. So pay it forward, help the next refugees. So where are we today? One thing I neglected to put on here, we have over 20,000 refugees from Bhutan living in Cincinnati today. 20,000. People ask me, how many have you touched? Probably 80% of those, if not more. We have Heartfelt Tidbits is a volunteer-based organization. We have 100 plus volunteers actively working on projects for us at all times, and that could be, hey, I'm just driving someone to English class and picking up, or it could be I've adopted this family and I take them to the grocery store, do all those things I used to do when I had the time before we had this many people. We work with over 40 partners. Partnership is so important, right? We have a very tiny budget. So if I didn't have my partners lending us space for our programs, walking beside us, helping us, we wouldn't be successful. We have relied heavily on partnership. And that I'll talk about a little bit more as we go on. So here are some of the programs we run today. This is not all of them. The bottom one, the support for basic needs, it's what consumes us. So that's, hey, my kid's in ICU at Children's. I don't know what to do. Can you come down here and help me make decisions? That's, my son just passed away. How do I bury him? Where do I go for cremation? My daughter's getting married. Who's going to let me burn something inside a place? Because we got to burn something. So I need to garden. I don't have money. My food stamps didn't work. I mean, the list is endless of what the questions are and the basic needs that these folks have each and every day. Now we, for the past 3 years, we made a conscious decision 3 years ago to extend past refugees from Bhutan and serve all refugees and immigrants in the Cincinnati area. So it's not unusual that in a single program I'll have 6 different languages being spoken. So people ask me all the time, what do you do about translators? If it's a language program or one of our programs that you see above, the basic needs, I don't bring interpreters because I feel like we have to learn how to communicate with one another. And what better way to inspire you to speak the language than me not to have an interpreter for you? I'm really upset with Google Translator right now because my refugees all think that that's the way they can communicate to me. What they don't realize is it's not a very good tool in many cases. So sometimes it says, instead of can you bring me the pen, it says, can you bring me the knife to kill that? And I'm like, uh-oh. So, you know, the other night, Google translated at 1 a.m. a message from a young woman that said, he's here, he's going to get me. And so I'm calling 911, sending them to her house, and I'm calling an interpreter, and I come to find out the repairman was there and fixed something. So I'm like, you have to stop using Google Translator with me. It's driving me crazy. But, so these are our programs. So one thing I want to talk to you about, since this is a creative group, is early in 2017, we formed a collaboration with Wave Pool, Heartfelt Tidbits did. And Cal Cullen, she won't even stand up. Stand up, Cal. The executive director and owner of Wave Pool, she had met with me the year prior in 2016 and said, hey, I want to work with refugees in this city. I've done it before. I really would love to work with your organization. I said, I've wanted to teach people how to do art. I'm not an art person, and they told me they're tired of making wooden picture frames, okay? So, and decorating pumpkins and eggs and all the other things I could do. And she said, well, I know fine art. I'm an artist. I can teach them art. And I'm like, fantastic. So we started bringing, her idea was to bring women there monthly for an art class. They showed up the first visit. Cal was like, okay, I'll see you next month. And they were like, next week. She's like, no, I teach a class at UC. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And they're like, no, next week. She said, maybe 2 weeks from now. No, next week. See you next week. So Cal, being the kind person that she is, she was like, okay, whatever, I'll find some artists to come in and teach you. We quickly found out that these women that we were bringing to the table, some of our most vulnerable population, were embracing the art. We were seeing tremendous healing of trauma. We were seeing laughter from people who cried nonstop for hours in our classes. We were starting to see them smile. We started to see them dance. We started to see them communicate with one another. It became real apparent that they had not only formed a friendship with Cal and myself, but they had formed a friendship and a bond with each other. They started taking care of one another. As they went through tragedies in their lives, they supported one another through them, just like we as females would do if we went to book club. And I was like, wow, you know, we have successfully created a community around this very vulnerable group of people that need it desperately. We had done a great job in the community garden with families, but not with a set group of people such as these women. So Cal started looking at the stuff that they were creating, and she's like, you know, do you sell their stuff? And I'm like, I do if they want me to. I go to craft fairs, and I said, but you know, think about it. I'm like so limited on time. I do like one or two a year for them. She goes, I think there's a space across the street we're gonna buy, and we should turn it into something for them, a creative space for them. Thus, the idea Welcome, the Welcome Project was created. So the Welcome Project is a collaboration between Wavepool and Heartfelt Tidbits. We combine art along with the immigrant and refugee experience. And I think I have. So we have programs that we offer. We moved our sewing program there. The ladies were like, hey, move that sewing program right down to that building. We painted it the colors we wanted. It's got our name on the door. We want to live there. I'm like, okay. And the youth come in for classes. We decided that wouldn't it be cool to give people an opportunity to grow into management or business positions there. So Lourdes Martinez is here with me today, and she's our first mentee at the Welcome. So we are mentoring her to become the manager of the Welcome Boutique. So very excited about that. We will have 3 types of product. Home, which we'll be sending out a survey to all of you to get your input, because we're trying to decide what that should be, what that product should be. Limited edition, which is an artist design product. And then creations, things that the ladies make who love their stuff. And they go, here, we want to sell this and see if it sells. And we have some housing nestled in with the artist in the community, along with the community garden that was launched there, which brought us up to like 4 community gardens. So that's the end, since they took all my time in the beginning. But, you know, I want to read this. I saw this from the Dalai Lama, and I think the last sentence is so relevant to this topic of compassion. Compassion, for example, brings self-confidence and an ability to act transparently. It strengthens trust, which is the ground for friendship. That is my ultimate goal for refugees and immigrants in this city, is to build friendship, community with them, let them know that they are loved and welcome here by us, and that we don't take it for granted that they're here. We appreciate the fact that they're here, and we recognize the gifts that they're bringing to us. While we're giving them a lot of gifts through our knowledge and that, they're giving us far more. We learn a lot from them, and I would encourage each and every one of you to, you know, he talks about the good egg. Look around your community and say, who's different than me? and learn their story. I think you'll be amazed at the internal growth you'll have from hearing these stories, because it's quite amazing, and it will humble you to think, and it gives you something. Instead of crying on your worst day, you think, no, it's really not that bad. I haven't had to do this yet, right? So it's really helped me put in perspective what is a true problem in my life and what is just something superficial that I'm whining about. So thank you very much. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, maybe one or two.
See, they just really screwed me up. Write that on your complaint form.
Well, and anyone can stay around after ask more questions.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. The shop is in Camp Washington. And if you have questions related to Welcome or Lourdes's role at Welcome, they're here to answer those questions for you. Yes, in the back. Sorry.
Thank you for all that you've done. I'm just absolutely blown away by this. I feel sheltered that I didn't even know this existed in Cincinnati. I was just wondering, have you ever gotten any national attention? Like, I feel like I could have been watching Oprah 10 years ago, and you could have been on it, or like someone should like let Ellen know what you're doing.
I know. Well, my mother tells me she's written to Ellen multiple times. Because she has seen me like go nuts when I can't get a 15-passenger van that costs more than $2,000. I don't know why we haven't received national attention. I will tell you, since this election, we have been fortunate in that I have received more attention than ever before. I think, partially why I didn't get the attention prior was I really wasn't spending a lot of time putting myself out there because I was so focused on doing the work. And I do feel, pretty overwhelmed because I'm doing this 7 days a week, and 20 hours a day is no exaggeration. So I really don't have a lot of time to market myself. And I always say if I had a great marketer, I probably might be famous by now, but unfortunately, I'm not. So, yes, in the middle.
Sheryl, great job on sharing your story in a personal way.
Yes.
One question I had was, are you working with undocumented immigrants as well?
Yes. So we are supporting, we don't ask about documentation when we first meet people. Later, I do ask about documentation from the perspective of how can I help you. Lourdes was my first victim of asylum application processing. When I met her, I was like, well, we need to put you in the asylum system. I can do that. I can read documents. And with help from attorneys reviewing what I did, we submitted her application for asylum. And with each and every person that I meet that is undocumented, I sort of examine their case and determine, should we file for asylum? Obviously, right now is not a good time to be filing for asylum. But, what kind of support do they need? Because they face different challenges than refugees who get some kind of support financially from Job and Family Services till they get on their feet. Immigrants do not. They are not entitled to any money, nor are they given a work visa. So how do you support your family when you're told if we catch you working, you're going to jail, which is a real reality today? And so how do you support your family? You have to rely on people making donations to pay your rent and stuff for quite some time. And asylum is not an easy process. It's about a 36-month journey. Good question. Any others?
I have a question.
Okay.
How can our audience get involved?
So you can go to heartfelttidbits.com. There's a volunteer link. We're also on Facebook. We also have a website for Welcome. What is it, Cal? Welcome.
WelcomeCincinnati.org.
Right, because welcome.org was taken. So, and you can reach out to us. At Welcome, we're getting ready to launch. Megan is helping us with this task. We're getting ready to launch community dinners to fundraise for our cafe that we'd like to open early next year. So we need to raise about $150,000 to do that. The Hale Foundation has been gracious and helped us on the boutique side with a project that will help generate some of that cost that we need to have.
Thank you, Sheryl.
Oh, one more question.
One more?
Do you partner with Catholic Charities somehow? Because there's some agency for Cincinnati on a document.
So they don't work with any partners. When we first began, they did work with us. They had a change in direction in leadership, and they decided that they were no longer going to partner with the 80-plus groups that support refugees in this city. So we find out about refugees through elementary schools, the school districts, the hospitals, the neighbors, a whole host of people that reach out to me. Unfortunately, even the homeless shelters, food banks, and that's when we get engaged. Yes?
Do you work with Refugee Connect through the Junior League?
Yes. So Refugee Connect, we are a partner of Refugee Connect, and we present at their REI meetings quarterly, and I help do their training and for volunteers and that. Yes, we do. So.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
all welcome to stick around and answer questions.
Thanks.